side wins control of a party committee or wins a nomination, the other side does not feel any great obligation or enthusiasm to get behind the folks who just beat them. That is, I think, the reality of our current situation. We can speculate about what should conservatives do under these circumstances, but that's my quick analysis of what has happened. Everything was on the line yesterday. With the left now in complete control of state government, there's no limit to what they can do to change the laws and policies within Virginia. And I do not think they are going to be hesitant to try to enact their entire agenda. I encourage you to live tweet today's event. The hashtag is on the screen. Thus far in 2019, the Leadership Institute has trained 9,554 students and conducted 303 separate training schools. Since 1979, your Leadership Institute has trained 218,627 students. You have before you our schedule for the upcoming months. Please take a moment to review these schools and consider attending one or more of these schools or sending a friend to one of our trainings. We could not do what we have been doing or plan to do without the help of generous donors. Many of you here are donors, and I think we cannot too often thank people who make it possible. You may notice that that here in this room, those of you who have been here often, we have a somewhat different appearance than you may remember. That is because in the last few months, our FM Kirby National Training Center has received a number of upgrades. And you may admire the new floor and ceiling and lighting during this program and many programs to come. These upgrades were necessary to continue to train effectively conservative leaders of tomorrow. Completion of this project is due only to the continuous and generous support of our donors, and so I thank you. And thank you to Wednesday Wake Up Club breakfast members and regulars who were patient through the construction delays we had. We had 2 months without breakfast. The first one was expected because of construction. The second one was because of permitting delays. Somehow Arlington County did not promptly come and do the inspections, and delayed, and we couldn't use the facility without the approval of the county government. But I'm thrilled to have you back with us here today. It's my pleasure to introduce Jean-Pierre Petrault for offering an invocation and a pledge of allegiance. He's a serious young man. He sat down here at the little table, which we can describe as the head table, and quietly said a blessing and crossed himself this morning before he ate. He's a fine young man. He attended university in Worcester, Massachusetts at Assumption College. He earned a dual degree in political science and foreign languages being both French and Mandarin Chinese. Jean-Pierre lives an active lifestyle, playing soccer and hiking throughout New England. He enjoys the arts as well, including calligraphy and pyrography. Let's see a show of hands. How many of you know what pyrography is? Well, these are people who know Jean-Pierre. I'll let you look it up. It is an art. Pyrography, pyrography. Jean-Pierre aims for work in the Trump re-election campaign in New Hampshire and eventually a career in international affairs. Jean-Pierre?
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord, the people he chose for his inheritance. Psalm 33, verse 12. O Lord, look favorably on us, your servants. Come upon us, bless us, and inspire us to preserve for you your nation here on earth. Despite the efforts of some who work tirelessly to separate our nation from you, you remain the foundation of our values, of our laws, and of our government. But as a building that grows tall, distancing itself from its firm foundation, then begins to sway in the wind, so too do we as a nation when we distance ourselves from you. You are the source of life, of liberty, and of happiness. Help us choose you every day, so that by your grace we may embolden the values of our nation, fortify your teachings through our practice, and elect steadfast men and women zealous to do your work. In a special way, we'd like to pray for the families and victims of the Sonora State shooting that took place this morning. We ask that you bless our food and our fellowship, guide our president and our community as we work together for your glory. In your name we pray, amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Please stand as we honor God and country and saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And now, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Dina Espenshine. She'll give our program's report. Dina came to the Leadership Institute back in 2016, fresh off the Donald Trump for President campaign. She brought with her more than 20 years of experience in grassroots organizing, volunteer management, and citizen lobbying at the local, state, and federal level. She is our Leadership Institute's Director of Grassroots Coalitions, and she's here to talk about a major project our grassroots team undertook this summer. Dina?
Thank you. Thank you, Morton. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. I do have one glimmer of good news from last night, and that is from Texas, and not to step on our speakers. I'm sure something that he was going to mention, but Texas last night actually put into their constitution that there will be no state income tax. So there is a safe haven for us, waiting for us. And I would like to talk to you a little bit about what the Leadership Institute was doing in Texas this summer. Are we able to get the slides up? Okay, I'm ready for you. Anyway, we had, there we go. We were, the Leadership Institute had a Texas tour this summer. We were invited down by a couple groups down there. And overall, we trained activists across the state of Texas. We did a campaign school. This is fun. We had 70 volunteers helping us with these different schools. Overall, we had 34 volunteer faculty helping us out. We taught for 204 hours at 33 different schools. We drove for 3,000 miles, the staff and faculty of the Leadership Institute, and I'm happy to report we paid 0 speeding tickets. We targeted 35 counties with 35 different schools, and we had assistance in marketing these programs from groups like Governor Greg Abbott, the Republican Party of Texas, the County Chairs Association, the Federated Women of Texas, the Young Republicans of Texas, and the Texas Policy Institute, or Texas Policy Foundation. We did appreciate the very wide support that we had from the groups down there. Overall, we trained 1,235 people, which was absolutely amazing to see that many people come out for these different programs. Our trainees included current members of Congress, state representatives, local officials, people who are running for all of those positions, party leaders, campaign staff, and of course, grassroots activists. We had a great time down there talking with people, working with the people, and educating them about how to make sure that they continue to win their elections. And they enjoyed us so much that they invited us back for a round 2. We've completed 16 schools so far. We have 4 more coming up next week. And so far we've trained 379 people. This second round of schools is a little different. We're doing precinct activism and get out the vote training for their volunteers. So hopefully helping them get ready for next year's elections so we can keep Texas a safe haven for conservatives. Anyway, thank you so very much. That's all I have for today.
Thank you. More than 30 different cities. That is a big effort. I now present to introduce our speaker, who has spoken from time to time over the years at this breakfast. Probably he has been a featured speaker more often than any other. We don't often invite people back, but we invite him back. He comes for free. That's one reason. He also is highly popular, and people know that. And that's we're going to have a treat. To introduce him, I present to you Colton Moore. Colton is currently a Leadership Institute intern. He's a recent graduate of West Virginia Wesleyan College, where he completed his Bachelor of Science in Economics and Philosophy, as well as a Master of Business Administration with a concentration in labor and law. He is a resident of Fenwick Island, Delaware, and plans to begin law school in D.C. in the fall of next year. Colton, come introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Morton. Good morning. Grover Norquist is president of Americans for Tax Reform, a taxpayer advocacy group he founded in 1985 at President Reagan's request. Americans for Tax Reform works to limit the size and cost of government and opposes higher taxes at the federal, state, and local levels, and supports tax reform that moves towards taxing consumed income one time at one rate. Americans for Tax Reform is the organizing force behind the Taxpayer Protection Pledge, which asks all candidates for federal and state office to commit themselves in writing to the American people to oppose all net tax increases. In the 115th Congress, 212 House members and 45 senators have taken the pledge. He serves as chair of the Washington, D.C. based Wednesday meeting, where more than 150 elected officials, political activists, and movement leaders gather weekly to discuss the pressing issues of the day. Mr. Norquist also serves on the board of the Parental Rights Organization and Center for National Interest. He has served on the board of directors for the National Rifle Association from 2000 to 2018. He serves as a contributing editor to the American Spectator magazine, serves as president of the American Society for Competitiveness. Mr. Norquist is also the author of 4 books: Rock the House, Leave Us Alone, Getting the Government's Hands Off Our Money, Our Guns, and Our Lives, Debacle, Obama's War on Jobs and Growth and What We Can Do to Regain Our Future, and End the IRS Before It Ends Us, How to Restore a Low-Tax, High-Growth, Wealthy America. Mr. Norquist holds an MBA and a BA in Economics, both from Harvard University. It is my pleasure to present Grover Norquist.
Thank you, Morton. Glad to be back. As a reminder, I was here right after the 2014 election, which was a little more cheerful. But just a few quick thoughts on last night. There were two measures in addition to Texas and Colorado where people had an up and down vote on, do you want higher taxes, lower taxes, more spending, less spending. Texas, I have two numbers out of there, one that's 77% and one that's 87%. Voted in Texas to put into the Constitution the ban on a income tax. Up until now, anytime you got a legislature that wanted to put an income tax in, they could vote it in with a simple majority and a governor, and they've talked about it from time to time. Now it would take an actual constitutional amendment, and the vote, whether it was 77 or 78, depending on whose tweets you believe, that's a very, very strong vote, and the idea that Texas is turning blue in terms of its desire for limited government rather than unlimited government does not seem to be a strong case. You can still, if you run lousy candidates, throw away races in that state, and we've come close to doing that. Colorado, the vote was actually on spending. They have something called TABOR, the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, which was passed back in '92, and that is what's kept Colorado growth of spending from growing too quickly. Government can only grow as quickly as GDP growth, inflation, GDP growth plus population. So if more people come in, you can have a slightly bigger government. If people have more money, you can have a slightly bigger government. And anything beyond that has to be given back to the people of Colorado in a tax cut. Now, what the Republicans did for too many years was they never hit that number, so nobody got the refunds, because they'd give a tax credit to their friends. So instead of everybody in the state getting an income tax cut of $100 or $200, they'd give credits to a particular industry, which might as well be spending at some point. And then people hadn't had it for a long time, and we had a Republican governor, Bill Owens, who the National Review announced was going to be the next president of the United States, because he'd kept spending so low. Well, he hadn't done a thing to keep spending low. The constitutional amendment kept the spending low. And Cato would always rate the Democratic governors of Colorado as really good on spending because they weren't allowed to do any better. And I realize if you're doing 50 states, it's hard to put asterisks on everything. But I did notice with some annoyance that these lousy Democratic governors in Colorado were getting credit, and the later Republican governors with no particular backbone, but they did. People have endoskeletons, which are inside you, right? But you can't see them. So you can't tell if somebody's backbone is strong, weak, missing. Clams and lobsters have exoskeletons. The skeleton's on the outside, you can see it. And exoskeletons are always an improvement over endoskeletons. Because even if somebody has a backbone and it's functioning, at some point, if you put a person into the water and they go down deep enough, the pressure crushes them. Doesn't matter how good your backbone is. If you have a shell, you're in much better shape. So an exoskeleton. A properly run conservative movement, a properly run Republican Party is that exoskeleton that keeps people in line, even if they have impure thoughts from time to time about policy. So it doesn't do any good to say, I like people with backbones because you can't see them, you can't make sure they're still functioning. The guy may have gone, I put up with so much the last 3 fights, now I'm going to punt on one. Or the people like the governor of Montana, who is very pro-life and bad on everything else, but he thought of himself as this great conservative because he was always getting yelled at by the liberals on the one, and he sold everything else out. And so there's some challenges on one's definition of what's holding the line. A properly constructed movement does that. One of the projects that I work on at Americans for Tax Reform is the Taxpayer Protection Pledge. We ask people, state legislators, governors, to make that commitment in writing. And there's a wonderful study out of the University of Washington. If somebody says they won't raise taxes, it has no noticeable change in their behavior. You can't tell the guy who said he won't raise taxes and the guy who doesn't say he won't raise taxes as to whether they raise taxes, okay? But if you sign the pledge and you write it down and there are two witnesses, and it's up on the internet, and we make copies of them, and people know that they signed the pledge, and they all watch George Herbert Walker Bush throw away a perfectly good presidency. Here's a guy who, managed the collapse of the Soviet Union, which is, without a lot of blood on the floor. Who thought that was going to happen as peaceably as it did and as successfully as it did? The deal was supposed to be we neutralize Germany and the Russians go back to their borders. What we got was Germany stayed in NATO, and we not only got Poland and Lithuania, but we got Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Kazakhstan, 15 different parts of the Soviet Union came apart. Very, very successful. That should have been on his gravestone. Instead of what he got was, I lied about taxes. That's what he's remembered for. Now I'm sorry for him, but it was a teaching moment for all other Republican politicians. Don't do that. And on your desk is 1994, the don't do that election, when we got 95, 97% of all the Republicans running for office to sign the pledge, the national level, House and Senate. A lot of states do quite well in the pledge. The states that don't do well in the pledge, like Virginia and Colorado, turn blue because people forget why you're supposed to vote for Republicans. But this shows a couple of things, this map. The blue on the top is the percentage, is how Democrat control of the Senate. Blue on the bottom is Democratic control of the House. And what you see for 62 years is there are only 4 years where the Republicans have the House and the Senate together. You see those two single lines. The rest of it's either Democrats have just about everything and or the presidency. We only in 2 years had the presidency in both houses, 2 years. Since the pledge became a commitment by just about all politicians, and the great news is everyone thinks the Republican has taken the pledge, so even Republicans who don't take the pledge and vote for tax increases, everybody screams at them as liars. They go, I never promised. You put the R next to your name, a lot of people make that assumption and will hit you on the back of the head for breaking your word, even though, I didn't do that, right? They think you did. And that has, and the good news is everybody, since that yellow line, who's taken the pledge, has kept it. If the Republicans had the House, the Senate, or the presidency, no tax increase. Only tax increases in the last several decades were the first 2 years of Clinton, where he had the House, the Senate, and the presidency. Got a tax increase, income tax increase, gas tax, and then lost the House and the Senate next election. Lesson learned, perhaps. And then and then we took the House and the Senate, and the economy started growing. People are always talking about, the economy did very well under Clinton. Yes, once we got a Republican House and Senate, which guaranteed that none of his ideas were actually going to pass. He wasn't going to get healthcare takeover. He wasn't going to get the tax increases he wanted. So he was president for 2 years, and then for 6 years had to share power. And then the first 2 years of Obama, you had Democrat House, Senate, Obama, tax increase, Obamacare, all sorts of damaging stuff, after which he lost the House, almost lost the Senate, should have lost the Senate, but we dropped the ball on that, and then eventually did lose the Senate. So for the last 6 years, with enough votes to filibuster in the Senate and majorities in the House, again, Obama didn't get to do anything truly destructive during that 6-year period. Do get judges, but in terms of laws, he didn't move the needle. And the economy got better as the Republicans had more control of the House and Senate, and you knew for sure that all of his particularly bad ideas were not going to get put in. Also on this, there are 2 little notes at the bottom here which show the 4 years of American history, 2-year period, 34 to 36 and 64 to 66, the New Deal and the Great Society. 4 years, 2-year periods where the Democrats lunged forward and planted little seeds that turned into oak trees. Social Security, Medicare, food stamps, all of the entitlement programs that are bankrupting the government. Half of government spending, half of the federal government spending, 10% of GDP. Federal government spends about 20% GDP. Half of that, 10%, was created in those two-year periods. So it isn't what some people say, the American people over time have decided every day they get up and the government gets bigger and bigger because they keep deciding to do that. In point of fact, for in these two-year periods, they set up laws which gave you increases in government spending guaranteed because it's an entitlement, and everybody who turns 65 gets this, and anybody who doesn't have a job gets that, and it's just automatic, and the spending is unlimited, and that's what's driving spending. Those two-year periods, okay? What we need to do, among other things, is come up with those things that move in the other direction, as, for instance, the Colorado measure, which limits spending. And that's not just for 2 years, that's for ever since they passed it. Now, we did have a hole punched into it by Governor Owens, the evil Governor Owens, Bill Owens, who is a Republican, who agreed to poke a little hole in the TABOR, the spending limit, to release the pressure to spend more money. Okay, and then he was going to go around the country. I had these long conversations with him, half hour at a time on the phone, trying to talk him out of supporting the weakening of the spending limit. And I still, to this day, don't understand what happened and why he got pressured into that, because every time you'd come up with a way to solve the problem he said he was solving, it was like he was checking with somebody behind him who had a gun and said, "Can I do that?" No, "Oh, I can't do that." "You just said this is what you needed, and we just designed a program to solve this problem you said is there." "Nope, can't do that." There was some sort of pressure, something, and they weakened it, and that's shortly after that decision is when the Republicans lost the House and the Senate in Colorado, because they opened the Pandora's box of more spending, and they ceased to be the advocates of higher spending. The measure there passed. The Democrats put up a measure to completely end TABOR, not just reform it, completely end it. Lost with 56% of the vote just yesterday. The other thing to keep in mind is Kentucky. We ran an incredibly unpopular governor. The rest of the Republicans at the top of the ticket won across Kentucky, and not necessarily, and some of them by quite a margin. You can have lousy candidates and good policy and still lose. So when it was pure policy up there, we did pretty well last night, but that's not the same thing as electing candidates. As we build an exoskeleton for elected officials and make it necessary for them, if they're going to be successful in primaries, to take conservative positions, I think it's important to keep in mind what the actual center-right, Reagan Republican, conservative movement is. And people used to talk about it as a three-legged stool: social conservatives, economic conservatives, foreign policy conservatives. Well, that may have made some sense when there was the Soviet Union, and that was our foreign policy for 50 years, which is don't get eaten, okay? Don't let them take over the world, and if we can, undermine them, and everything else was just sort of something else. Latin America, where's that? I mean, there was one foreign policy issue that you had. Now we're in the question of, is invading Iraq a good idea or a bad idea? Staying for 50 years a good idea or a bad idea? What's the conservative position, right? We're supposed to occupy Iraq and Afghanistan forever. We're going to turn them into Kansas City, or was that a mistake? Do we not do that? And there are conservatives who disagree. And on social issues, are guns a social issue? What's a social issue? So, I mean, there's a lot of questions. I would suggest a different way of looking at it, and that is that the modern Reagan Republican Party, the modern conservative movement, is a coalition of groups and institutions and structures that on their vote-moving issue, this is key, not all issues, okay? Their vote-moving issue, that what they want from the government is to be left alone. Homeschoolers, leave me alone to homeschool, center of my life, biggest sacrifice I make, this is important. Well, and you can talk about all sorts of other issues, but that's the one that moves, that matters. And now add to that the 3 million kids now in charter schools whose parents struggled or got lucky but don't want to lose it to get into a good charter school. And the Democrat position now is take that away. If the Democrats had power, they would end or regulate homeschooling to the point where it wasn't what it is today, and the charter schools would be destroyed. The governor of New York keeps announcing he's going to do that on a regular basis. And that's 3 million people there. You have the Second Amendment community. And again, as much as I think hunting is fun, the number of hunters is declining 25% every generation as urbanization takes place. And I went out pheasant hunting. You got to drive an hour and a half to a place that you actually rent the farm to do it. You can't walk down the road to the local farmer and shoot at the pests in his farm. And so bird hunting is way down in terms of numbers. Deer hunting, not changed. But that's not the backbone anymore, if it ever was, of the Second Amendment community. The concealed carry weapon permit holders. Virginia has this. One of the things the D's will probably try and threaten and regulate and damage. But 41 states have shall issue concealed carry. Supreme Court said everybody has to give you concealed carry. I'm in DC. I'll let you know how long that project takes. But technically, they do have to. If I jump through enough hoops, it took 9 months to get a shotgun into my house. We'll see what a pistol looks like. But the Second Amendment community, there are now 18.7 million. 18.7 million Americans with a concealed carry permit, which means they have the right to carry a gun and swallow their back, under their arm, in their car, in their purse, all day. Hunters care about their guns. I mean, a couple weekends a year, they go annoy Bambi's relatives, but the rest of the time, the shotgun's in the basement, the rifle's in the basement. Concealed carry permit holders have a personal relationship with their firearm. They know when they're out somewhere where it is. They know if anyone's looking at it. They know if anyone's. It's like having a kid with you, right? You know where it is. You know if anybody's near you. You know if anybody's close to your kid or your gun, and it's just part of you. It changes who you are. It changes the nature of who you are, and that is a huge political constituency. And you go down to the various communities of faith. Who the most important thing in life is to practice their faith, transmit it to their children, and they want to be left alone to do that. Okay, but that means that all of them. That's why all the various communities of faith, the more religious you are, the more this is important to you, the more Republican you are as the party that is in favor of religious liberty. And so we have evangelical Protestants, conservative Catholics, Orthodox Jews, Muslims, Mormons. If your faith is important to you and you want to be left alone, there's only one party willing not to poke you. Now, it also means all those other guys who completely misunderstand Scripture and are going to Hades lickety-split need to also be left alone if I'm going to be free to go to heaven. Those other guys can do what they want. But around, which is why we have an ecumenical religious liberty fight. If it was just us versus them, then you have France and Ireland and India. You got all sorts of places that play that game. We're the right religion, you're the wrong religion. That way is not either freedom or peace or good theology. But very interestingly, we've been able to build in the United States in a way that other countries just have not figured out how to do this, a pluralism that all supports religious liberty. Even though that, not that it doesn't matter, it does matter. That person's going to Hades. I'd like to talk him out of it. But the government's not going to mess with them. The government's not going to tell them what to do. So, and then you have the small business community. And so around the table, you have all these people who on their vote-moving issue, they wish to be left alone. They don't ask, please go give me a free gun. They don't, ask for Baptist stamps. They just want to be left alone. And that's why our coalition holds together well. I'd also like to suggest that you're really looking, when you're talking about vote-moving issues, often for lifestyle issues. Is this the issue that dominates someone's self-definition? Gun people think that way. Homeschoolers think that way. Charter parents think that way. Religious people view it that way. We're in the process of making a huge mistake, the White House, in taking the Obama plan to ban flavored vaping, which was Obama's plan, which they rejected, and they're now going to put it back in because it will make Bloomberg happy. But there are 9 million vapors in the 9 adults, voting adults, in the 17 swing states. And the polling data, which you can find at atr.org, more than half of them tell you they will vote against anyone who bans flavors, that is central enough to their life. People who vape, if you don't vape, I don't vape, but I know all these people who do. People who vape, they spend more time vaping than nuns spend praying in convents. It is all day, okay? It is a central part of what one does, and it's water vapor. It's flavored. It's not bad for your health. It's a huge improvement over cigarette smoking. It is a lifestyle issue. These people feel very virtuous about it. It's why Ron Johnson was elected in Wisconsin in 2016 and announced on election night. He'd organized every vape store. There are 14,000 vape stores in the country. They're the mega churches of the vaping community. This is the best, which is why they want to shut them down. The plan the administration has will allow Juul, which is like owned by one of the tobacco companies, largely, to ban everything except to ban all the flavors that adults like. 90% of adults use flavors. Bloomberg says, oh, flavors are just for children, which is why vodka only comes in tobacco flavor, because adults don't like flavors, and at Baskin-Robbins, the adults all get the tobacco-flavored ice cream. Who's the idiot who thought up this idea that adults don't like flavors? But it was the best argument they had just for kids. By the way, teenage smoking down to historic lows. They're vaping. The ones who want to do something, vape instead of smoke. Well, smoking gives you cancer, and vaping is water vapor. And so this is a huge health improvement, but it's also a political, watch for this happens if they actually pull the trigger and moving in the wrong direction. I think it could cost them the next election. And so as you're doing political organizing, always look for new groups you can bring into the coalition. We discovered the Vapors in 2016 because they put 300 people in state legislatures to complain about tax increase. I can't think of a consumer product that I could get 300 people to go to the state legislature and complain and demonstrate. I said, I want to party with these people. I want to work with these people because they're willing to fight for themselves. Unlike cigarette smokers, they would never even write a letter when they wanted to raise cigarette taxes. So to heck with that. But the vapors are very much against being taxed and regulated and want to do something about it. So we need to constantly be looking for who is the government messing with, who are they stepping on, who are they bothered, that getting them to stop that could bring us a constituency if we are the tribune for that project line and work with them and listen to them and respect their concerns. It may not be, again, I don't vape, I don't mean I don't care, but I mean, I don't have any personal interest in this stuff, but I know other people do. It's not my job to tell, oh, you've got the wrong key issue. The key issue for you should be X. What? You can't tell people that. But you can tell them that. It has no impact whatsoever if you tell them they should care about something other than what affects their lives and that they see as effective. So we need to look for those lifestyle issues where the other team is messing with us and build on those. The second part of that, or the counterpart to that, is where the government has put up rules which advantage the left, like labor unions can forcibly collect dues and then spend them in politics. The Supreme Court decision that says no, for all public employees, you cannot be required to either join a union or pay dues. That is a phenomenal change in the correlation of forces because that's half of government workers. So we now have, under Supreme Court decision, half of all unionized workers, half of them are in the public sector, half of them in the public sector, are now in right-to-work states. Even if they take right-to-work away in Virginia, they cannot take right-to-work away for government workers. You can still walk out the door, not pay dues. And that is literally more than $1 billion a year that goes straight into the left's activity with the cash flow that they get from those union dues. So we can make more of us, we can make fewer of them, and every day we wake up, we should be looking for who are we not talking to, who wants to vote for us and should vote for us, and all we have to promise them is not somebody else's money, but to leave them alone and stop messing with them. And what is the other team doing to change the rules? Tort law that allows billionaires to sue everybody and put people out of business and then take that money and reinvest it in Democratic candidates. Big win in Mississippi. It's tough. You go on Twitter and all those things. Try and find the Mississippi election. The Republican won against one of the most competent, tough, smartest, dangerous trial lawyer AGs that they ever had. This was not a sure bet at all. I would have not been surprised at all if we'd lost that race given what they had behind them. But they didn't. And next up is Louisiana. I think we're seeing Louisiana should be okay to defeat a sitting Democratic governor who ran promising not to raise taxes. And of course, he did raise taxes. But he also did something. He ran as the pro-life, pro-gun, moderate Democrat who was left-wing on everything, except those two issues, which he couldn't have passed anything through the legislature anyway, okay? And too many of the guys you look up and you see a false flag, right? You go, oh, well, he's pro-life. That must mean, because most other politicians, if they're pro-life, they're also boom, 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 boom on all these other issues, okay? Well, the other team has figured out that, and they're never liberal, they're never conservative on tax policy or trial lawyers, and liberal on the other stuff. They take the ones, throw it up, that they know would fool many conservatives who just, you look up, you say that's the pro-life candidate, probably good on everything, because that's what you get yelled at most. If you are outside of the left's narrative, you get screamed at. So people who cannot get moved when they get screamed at about that will probably hold on everything else, which is usually true for ours, not true for D's. D's go, I won't steal your guns because they don't have the legislature. Oops, I don't say that second part out loud. And then they get in and they do everything else. And if they get the legislature, as in Virginia, watch them move on guns as well. Time for a question or two?
Sure.
Yes. The gentleman with the beard, then you.
Yeah. I was wondering what you're thinking of, having suffered with the lack of deductions on Schedule A. I'm wondering what you think, the attacks on the SALT and the other deductions that came with the old Schedule A. What do you think are those things going to change, or do you think they're going to be able to hold the line on that?
Okay, these are the state and local tax deductions. If you live in a high tax state, high income tax, high property tax, if you have a high income and or a big house, you got to deduct the property taxes that you paid and the income taxes that you paid in New York, New Jersey, California. And that was in effect a subsidy for bigger government. And you could see this back in 1978 when then Governor Jerry Brown, very similar to the new Governor Jerry Brown they recently had, said, don't vote for Prop 13, the tax cut, because it'll cut property taxes by $4 billion in California. But $1 billion of that will be recaptured by the federal government because you'll have more money, and on average you pay 25% of your income in federal income taxes. So you want to give $1 billion to Washington? Vote this down. So we steal $4 from you. And there's a 25% discount on our taxes, right? When we raise taxes, you don't pay the whole thing if you're in the high income brackets, and you get a bigger deduction. And they literally were selling tax increases to higher income people as 30% off, like going to a store and the retail store, and that was their sales pitch. Whenever they raised taxes, or whenever you wanted to cut taxes, well, it's really not that big a deal because the feds will get a part of all your savings. You'd only get $3 billion. The feds will get $1 billion, so you should vote to have nothing for you and pay $4 billion more. Limiting the SALT, state and local tax deductibility, means every largely California, New Jersey, Connecticut, New York states will not be raising taxes on higher income people or more expensive houses. Why? Because now they pay the whole thing and they're really irritated and they feel it completely. And so I know all these nice rich people who, like the guys on Fox TV that do the interviewing, the hosts, right? There are several of them are, well, I don't like this SALT thing because I'm getting screwed by these higher taxes here. So I said, we're helping you because you live in New Jersey or New York, and they're never again going to raise your taxes up because you're that upset about noticing that you pay it on that. And so it may hurt a little bit, but long term, we just did California a big favor, and New Jersey, taxpayers in those states, a big favor. I think it's a huge help. The Democrats talk about getting rid of it because they've got upper and middle income people who notice that they didn't get as big a tax cut as everybody else because now they've lost that deduction. They're never going to take that away because that goes largely to higher income people. So the D's won't get rid of it. We don't want to get rid of it. Let's take everybody's taxes rates down, 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 down. Yes. Green.
So I'm looking toward.
Get a mic.
Sorry. So I'm looking toward the new tax package that may be coming up
Oh, yeah.
next year. And we're, at least for my family, we've had an adoption journey. So we are hoping that Congress would consider reforming the adoption tax credit in some ways, because it's been since 1996, and there's a lot of new issues with adoption that we kind of maybe need to take a look at. And so I didn't know your feelings on tax credits and things like that with adoptions, even like new technologies that are impacting things too, and how we can respond to that, like in an innovative way for tax reform.
Okay. Here's as much as I know about tax reform 2.0. The next tax cut that the Trump administration and the Republicans will run on. It will be targeted at middle-income people, because the president thinks that the left yelled that the other one was for rich people. I've got news for the president. I don't care what tax cut you got. It'll be yelled at as for rich people. So give up this idea that New York Times is going to write Trump has middle-class tax cut. But that's what he wants to start with, so that's what we're going to start working on. It won't work. I don't understand why he doesn't get this, but it's going to be a middle-class tax. The last one was a pretty big middle-class tax cut, too. $70,000 a year dead center, middle-income person, household in the country, a $2,000 tax cut. Middle-income, single parent, one kid, got $1,300 tax cut. Those are pretty significant. Watch for things that focus on IRAs and 401ks. And the reason for that is the most interesting polling data. We've run a campaign for the last 3 years to end the taxation of inflation in capital gains, so that when you pay capital gains tax on a house, land, a building, shares of stock, a business you have, you don't pay taxes on the inflation buildup on that, but only the real gain that you got. 40%, when you sell stock, 40% of the capital gains people pay on shares of stock is actually inflation. So if you just got rid of inflation, it's a 40% rate cut, right there, boom. It pulls off the charts, but most importantly, when you divide voters and there's suburban women and Southerners and all these other little balls on the chart, and the one that's called gettables, people that the Trump people might be able to get, they move fastest and hardest on ending the tax on inflation and capital gains to help your IRA 401k. They phrase it connecting it to your 401k IRA, so people remember, oh, but I don't own land, or that your 401k is where you get damaged by this. That is the number one things that moves people towards a Trump vote. That will be in the package, okay? I would like to do it by executive order. I believe the White House understands the president's for it. The Treasury Secretary doesn't want to get out of bed to do it, but knows he has the authority to do it. So it may yet happen if they get nervous enough, pull the trigger on doing it by executive order. But at a minimum, the next time the Republicans write a bill, we're going to write a bill, nothing will happen until you have a Republican House, Senate, and presidency. Nothing, nothing, nothing. There is no good tax bill to be passed as long as the Democrats have anything to do with it. There's not. That's not. They want to go this way. We want to go this way. There's no compromise. There's no such thing as a compromise tax bill. The D-passed tax increases have all passed with only D votes. The R tax cuts have only passed with R votes. There are more pro-life Democrats than there are pro-taxpayer Democrats. There's some Democrats who won't steal your guns today, okay? But there's no Democrat who's any good on taxes. And even the weenies we have on our side who sort of, wobbly every once in a while, very unlikely we lose them on taxes. We might lose them on something else, but not taxes. So that's not going to change. So I think we're in fine shape for the next tax bill. Good news is that the other tax challenge we have, which is the trade war with China, which is a massive tax on American consumers. This is trade wars are ones with you. Everybody who gets shot is all friendly fire. You better knock it off, or we're going to really mess with our consumers and make Walmart raise their prices, you nasty Chinese people. I don't understand why this, first of all, it didn't work. But we're not going to make it worse, and we may actually take the tariffs down. I mean, yes, China cheats, and we should do all sorts of things to fight them. Tariffs, I'm for appendectomies, but not with baseball bats, okay? The appendectomies done with people with baseball bats don't turn out well, and trade wars don't turn out well. The goal may be laudable, but the mechanism doesn't work throughout all of history ever. And we just saw another president's done a very helpful thing. Look at this. Don't ever do this again. This was pretty not helpful. we're gonna get some sort of deal to tamp it down. That's why the stock market's going up. That the thought that we're not gonna make it worse, the stock market's going through the roof, they actually take some of these tariffs down and get some reforms that, so they steal less of our stuff. That would be really good too. So we could go in the next election fairly strong on the economy. But that's part of the project, and the next tax bill will be part of that too. Thank you.
Grover, your staff emphasized repeatedly to us that
Yep.
you are on a very tight schedule this morning. I know that there are other people who would like to ask questions, and I know you would give scintillating answers. But thank you so much for coming, and to speed you on your way, let me present to you the Leadership Institute, Adam Smith.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for watching. To see our latest video, click here. And to make sure you don't miss any future videos, be sure to subscribe. And since you're still here, give this video a thumbs up.